Welcome to Season 3 of the Builders Podcast. I'm Matt Levenhagen. Here we share the journeys, strategies, and lessons that help entrepreneurs build what's next. Builders helping builders. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today we are joined by Dan Daly. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Excited to be here.
So Dan is the founder of Global Investment Partnership. So tell us a little bit about what you guys do, what you do personally, and just take a minute or two and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, sure. So Global Investment Partnership is a company that I founded focused on international hospitality real estate. So primarily in Europe, most of our properties, short-term rental, Airbnbs, that grew so quickly in about 5 years that we're now launching a private equity fund that will focus on international hospitality real estate, small boutique hotels, short-term rentals, mainly in Portugal. And we're launching some properties in Costa Rica and Japan in 2026. So we're super excited about the new fund. It's eligible for Portugal's Golden Visa, which gives you the right to residency by investment. 500,000 euro investment, and after 5 years thereabout, you get permanent residency for yourself, your spouse, and your entire immediate family. So really, really attractive investment opportunity. You're investing in hospitality, which is just blowing up in Europe, especially in Portugal. And then at the end of the 5 years and your annual yield, you're getting permanent residency to a foreign country that you can live and work, travel throughout the entire European Union. So it's over 20 countries at this point. And that comes after years of kind of working my way up through the automotive business. Started off in sales, 20 years ago, and worked my way up through all the different positions in the dealerships. And then about 6 years ago, went and ran a company for a gentleman here in Los Angeles that was starting the automotive business. And he had one little tiny store, and he wanted to get into the automotive business. So I was the first employee that he hired as the vice president to build that for him. And in 5 years, we built that to 9 dealerships and $700 million in annual revenue in a very short amount of time. So that was an exciting ride. And going back even before that, just started from very humble beginnings. My dad wasn't in the real estate business. I didn't have relatives in the automotive business. I kind of was at that crossroads early on, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And somebody gave me the opportunity to get into the automotive world. And I took it and ran with it.
Wow. Okay, so as we were kind of before we started, I said, you are an amazing business and doing amazing things where it allows you to travel, and I'm sitting here at my computer every day and wishing I had made different choices in my life. And you said it's not too late.
It is. Well, listen, I learned it, right? It is never too late, Matt. I mean, I didn't get into the real estate game until I was 48 years old. Which in real estate is kind of late. A lot of those guys that are really big into real estate, second and third generation, their dad was in it, their grandfather was in it, they were raised in it. I wasn't. So I was kind of late to the game, but did a lot of research, did a lot of due diligence, figured out what I wanted to do fairly quickly, and then just went all in and have made a lot of progress in a really short amount of time. So, it's one of those things that could seem overwhelming when you're looking for what do I do next? But once you really figure out exactly what you want to focus on, you have your mindset set on that vision and the strategy, there's no stopping you. Yeah.
Well, I'm 54th year, and I hopefully got I'm actually...
You're halfway there.
Traveling. Even though I'm halfway there. Even though I'm not traveling and stuff, I'm actually pretty happy with what I'm doing. Although I feel like I could take my laptop places and, hang out maybe at some property somewhere in Europe. So let's actually rewind back a little bit. Let's talk about how kind of your roots a little bit and how did you get started and kind of that journey.
Yeah.
And all the kind of probably ups and downs and things you've learned about yourself over that time and how you landed on what the awesome things you're doing today. So I'm throwing it to you.
Yeah, so coming out of, I guess it was coming out of high school, right? It's that age when everybody's asking you, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? What are you going to do next? And that was a really big question for me because I was one of those people where I never really understood what I wanted to do next, right? I was kind of in that gray area trying to figure it out. And my dad was a blue collar guy, and we came from, great life, great schools. My family were great providers for us, but humble beginnings at the same time. And my dad got me into the local blue collar janitors union. And I had benefits, I had a job, and I was gonna kind of ride that wave until I figured out what I was going to do next. And I remember, Matt, I was working the midnight shift one night, 11 at night till 6 in the morning. And one of the old timers came up to me and he said, "Oh, so you're a lifer now?" And I said, what does that mean? I was so naive, I didn't even know what he was referring to. He said, "Well, you're here for the rest of your life." And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, I have goosebumps right now still telling the story, and I've told it 10,000 times. Yeah. It just changed the whole dynamic of my life, right? Am I going to let somebody else decide what I'm going to do, or am I going to figure out how to take control? And I wound up quitting shortly thereafter. Dad was not really happy about that. I said, "Great, what are you going to do now?" And I said, "I don't know, Pop, but I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life." And wound up running into somebody that was a friend of a friend, and he was running a very successful automotive dealership where I was living. He said, "Well, you're great with people, you're passionate about cars, it's a hobby for you, you can combine a couple of things that you're really good at. Why don't you come sell cars?" And I kind of looked at him, I said, "Dude, I'm not a car salesman," right? I was almost insulted by the opportunity. And I kind of kept thinking about it. Long story longer, and 20 years later, I got into that business, and it was a very rewarding business. I met tons of great people. I made a great living. I learned a lot, and I hustled. I looked for every opportunity that I could in the dealerships, whether it was at the sales level or management level. Wound up working my way up very quickly in that business to general manager at 28 or 29 years old, running dealerships. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, was hired by a gentleman here in Los Angeles who wanted to get into the automotive business. He was in real estate and sports entertainment. And he said, "Listen, I've got this little boutique dealership in SoCal, and I kind of want to do something with it, but I'm not a car guy. I need somebody to help me build it and mold it." And literally gave me a yellow pad and a pen as employee number one and said, "Go do what you do, figure it out. We'll put some horsepower behind this." And grew that to 9 dealerships, 500 plus employees, and 600-700 million a year in revenue in 5 years. Where, some groups, it takes them 2-3 generations to do that. We did it in 5 years. So just an amazing ride, an amazing experience, learning and building something from nothing. And that kind of transitioned into what I'm doing now with the private equity firm.
Well, let's pull that apart a little bit. You obviously had some great lessons along the way. You started out, you said you didn't really see yourself as a car guy or in sales. But how did that change? You just dove in and you just started to realize, "Oh, I am good with people." And then what kind of lessons did you learn along the way that kind of where your sales acumen and your sales abilities and all that what did it start to center around?
Yeah, here's the great thing about learning kind of how to build my own brand, which still stays with me today. So when you're in sales, especially in the New York City area, and if you're selling BMWs, right, there's 10 other BMW dealerships within a half-hour drive selling the same exact product. So now you've got a lot of competition selling the same exact product. Then at the dealership level, there's 30 different salespeople there on the sales floor selling the same product, right? So a very, very competitive internal environment in the dealership, and even on the macro level, right? Larger, trying to compete with these other dealerships. And I kind of just looked at the salespeople that were having the most success and the salespeople that were having the least amount of success. And you would see 2 guys sitting 20 feet apart, same dealership, same sales floor, selling the same product. And one is selling 40 cars a month and the other is selling 4. So why was that? So I started to figure out what one person's bad habits were and writing them down, observing them, and just putting them on my list to never do again. And then I would watch the successful guys and just steal their whole game, right? Learn from them, figure out what they were doing, why it worked, and put my own spin on it and make it my own. And somebody taught me early on, the product that you're selling in retail gets the customer interested, but the salesperson is what sells the product. People buy from people they like. So I learned early on that I was my brand. right? The car brought them into the dealership, but I was my brand. And here's 5 reasons why you want to buy from me. I wasn't the cheapest in town, but I was going to give you the best customer experience today and for the next 3 years and 10 years while you were part of the family. So that was the biggest thing I learned early on, is that I am my brand.
That's interesting. So one of the things that jumps out at me, I actually, a couple decades ago at this point, back in the 90s, 97, I got into the insurance business, and I started working for and then with, we ended up spinning off an independent agency together. But I remember he was kind of old. He was older than I was. That's super old, maybe 10, 20 years, but he had a lot more experience in that domain. And I remember we were in this office and we had different little offices next to each other, same office, different rooms. But I would sit there and I would sit right around the corner and I would just listen to him on the phone, just listen to how he talked and his patterns. And not all of them were great. So nope, don't want that pattern. But over time, I would learn how to speak insurance.
Yep.
And it sounds like that's kind of similar to you. That's something that sounds like it was kind of maybe ingrained in you. I don't know where you learned to do that, but you kind of you study people, and you studying the people that like the people you didn't want to emulate and the ones you did.
Yeah.
And figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from either, to be honest. It was just instinctual for me, right? I looked at the people that were successful and I didn't try and reinvent the wheel. I just said, let me do what they're doing and put my own spin on it, and avoided the things that didn't work for the people that weren't doing well. And that carried with me through my entire career. As a manager, I would teach the salespeople the same thing, right? And as a vice president, I would teach the managers the same thing, right? You are your brand.
Right.
What the product you have is bringing the customers in the store. It's our job to keep them there and to give them a great experience so they come back and you get the referrals. Same as any other business. And that has stayed with me for 20, 25 years, even when I'm doing it today, right? When I'm talking to investors that are investing $500,000 into international real estate, it's all about how am I taking care of them, right? What's the relationship? What's the experience? How is the communication? Is there a trust factor there? Do they like me? Those are all, things that we as consumers rely on, whether we realize it or not, if we're going to buy something from someone.
That's interesting. Yeah, it applies to every business, even the agency life over here. And
Yeah.
I think about like the agencies that struggle. Is it really, or the people that struggle in any kind of sales environment, when you're trying to sell a product or service, like, is it really, if you really looked internally, is it you that's actually the one that's like, if I'm going to this, if we're going to try to go after the same client, and one of us has a great personality and we got the energy and the fire and
Yep.
we are knowledgeable and we're just helpful and you're taking care of them. And I think that's like, I love to hear like when a client says, you're like family, you're going to,
That's the best compliment somebody can give, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, what are the characteristics, if you could name just a couple, that make a great salesperson or really help somebody reel in the big fish or any fish, or just, do better in that environment?
I think for me, coming up in sales, and still I consider myself in sales today, right? Just doing different things in a different product. It's always your intention, right? Am I trying to get money from this person? Am I trying to get them to buy something from me? Or am I trying to educate them about the product they're interested in? And I trying to give them a great experience while I do that. And that was my road, right? Price came last, the product sale came last. And when you don't have the internal pressure of I have to sell something today, or I have to sell something from this guy, or how do I get a deposit out of him? I never really had that mindset. My mindset is, what are you here for? How can I help you? And I want you to leave and go, that was a great experience. I went in, I talked to Dan, I learned more about it. I talked to him about this new fund. He explained the real estate to me. It's very simple. I like the way he explained it. There's no pressure, and the rest will flow from there. But it's your intention, right? Your intention, in my opinion, needs to be, how do I educate someone about what they're interested in? How do I give them a great experience while I do that?
I think probably a lot of that's just like active listening, just because if you're thinking about the sale, you're not listening to.
Then you're not listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you focused on brand, you've learned all that, and how do you apply that today now to like real estate, and how did that kind of, I mean, well, first let's go to the 5 years in building that thing
Yeah.
to however hundreds of millions or whatever it was.
Yep.
What was that experience like? Are there other lessons from that kind of built on what you already learned?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those terrifying and exhilarating experiences, like anything else that's new and exciting, right? When you're trying to do something new or different, you get a balance of both of those things. I think you have to stay rooted in believing that you can do this, right? Your mindset. Stay focused and be your number one cheerleader. Here's why we're doing it. Here's the plan. Do we believe in it? The answer is resoundingly yes. And okay, now what do I need to do to get from A to B and then B to C? So really baby steps. But the core of it is, what do I want to accomplish? What's my plan to accomplish it? And do I believe in that? And for me, those are the three fundamentals. And once I can put those three pieces together, I can go at 100 miles an hour. Then it's about finding good people to surround yourself with, to start to delegate, to take some of the workload off so that you can build. And early in my career, I kind of learned it the hard way. I was trying to take on everything because I can do it quicker, I can do it better. I don't have to worry about double checking somebody's work. But you can't grow that way. You can't scale in any business. You're only going to get so big until you can get people to believe in what you're doing, to do it a certain way consistently, and then hand it off to them, empower them to do it, and then you can scale. So those are all the things I learned from that business, which transitioned right over to real estate. It's a different product. It's real estate versus an automobile. They're both tangible assets. They both have a value. One appreciates the real estate, the other depreciates the car. So very similar conversations, right? And I think that goes back to having that clear, consistent communication with whoever your client or vendor or business partner is or customer. Is what are we trying to accomplish? What's the plan? Tell me more about it.
That's interesting. So I feel like the lesson is well, first of all, was it easy for you to to delegate and to build a team and do all the things that you're pretty good at, and now you got to get other people to do it? Was it hard for you to do that?
It was in the very beginning. In the very beginning, going back years running a dealership, I wound up doing, a lot of the heavy lifting because of all the reasons I mentioned, right? Then I realized I'm the hardest working person here. So there's something wrong with that. Not that I don't mind hard work, right? But I had more value doing higher level things. So it took me a while to figure out how to delegate. But once that light bulb goes on and you know that you cannot scale unless you learn how to delegate, that's step number one, right? So you swallow the blue pill and you say, okay, I'm going to become a better delegator. Now you have to find people that you can delegate to, which is another challenge, right? And then getting them to do things the way you need them done, or the company needs them done, or the customer expects them done, because everybody has a different perspective of the same thing. You and I can look at a painting and I see something and you see something totally different. It's very similar when you're trying to communicate to someone about what you want them to do. And I'll give you a really brief example. As a vice president running a company, I would say to somebody, okay, here's the goal, here's the strategy, here's what we need to execute over the next 30 days. We're on the same page, and everybody nods their head, and they all go, yep, I got it, okay. And then I started to learn, okay, deliver it back to me. Silence, crickets, right? Tell me what I just told you. So a lot of us, myself included, when somebody, especially your boss, right, or a position of authority, is explaining something to you, very few people will say, time out. Can you go over that again? I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. We don't want to feel like we don't know or we're less than, right?
Right.
So I learned that early on, is after somebody tells me, yes, I know what you want and how you want it, I'd say, okay, great. Tell me what I want and how I want it. And usually 99% of the time they can't feed it back to you. So you just go through that exercise. Okay, let's go through it again. And by the second or third time, they get it. And now you've set the precedent that the next time you're kind of talking to them about what we need to achieve next and you're asking them to do something, they're going to say, wait, time out. Can we go over that again? Because they know you're going to ask anyway, right? So you're kind of like leading them down that path in a gentle way where, they should catch on very quickly after that about, the way the company does things and how you need them done and the interpersonal relationship. So again, it's communication, right? Yeah. And it could be with your spouse, your partner, your kids. Here's what I need you to do. Okay, I got it, Dad. Tell me what I need you to do. Silence, right? So it's the same thing with employees. It's clear communication and then not moving forward until both people realize they're on the same page. I just had a big call with some investors this morning, and these are all grown men, titans of industry. And, we're talking on a conference call, and by the time I'm done, I say, all right, everybody understand what I'm talking about? And they go, yeah, we think we got it. And once I hear we think we got it, I said, all right, do me a favor, just so we're on the same page, somebody give it back to me. And, they did a pretty good job of giving it back. These are high-level guys, right? So they're very observant and they're great listeners. But it's like when you go into a restaurant and you give the waiter your order. If he doesn't read it back to you before you go in the kitchen, you're always crossing your fingers, hoping it comes out the way you ordered it. So it's no different, right? When the waiter reads it back to me, I go, oh, he gets it. I want it medium rare. This is how I want my potato. This, whatever it is, right? Communication, verification, move forward.
Yeah, that sounds really important, actually. Reinforce. That's a good way to kind of reinforce what you're trying to communicate.
I learned it early on selling cars, right? I had a really good manager that was really a mentor, and he took me under his wing, and I'd go into him and I'd say, Billy, I'm having I've got this obstacle with this customer, and here's where I am. He'd say, okay, here's what I want you to say. Go out there and say these 3 things. And I'd say, all right, got it. And he'd say it back to me. And I would do my best, and he'd go, that's not what I said.
Yeah.
So I learned it early on, and it stayed with me forever, and it still stays with me today. I used it this morning on an investor call.
Interesting. So, okay, so we got your brand, building your own personal brand is important, or the brand within what you're doing.
Yeah.
But then also then building the team is important, and actually probably you're in a sense you're transferring your personal brand onto them.
100%.
The other thing you're saying too that that I think probably explains your success on some level is that you're coming in with the plan and the vision, and especially when you're building a team, you have to be able to communicate that's kind of your before you even start something, before you even go into a venture, you have to have some kind of compass, like something that's going to your North Star and all that. And then you start bringing in the people that can help you with that vision and that are on board with it.
Yep.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So that went well in that business, in the car business. So how does that now translate to? I feel like this is great. We're like going along your story. You're
well, listen, that's how it works, right? They're just tools in my toolbox that I've gathered over the years that are still viable today as they were 20 years ago. So I'll give you a really good real world example. I just came back from a trip in Portugal. Okay. And there's not much of a language barrier there because English is almost everybody's second language and they speak it fluently and predominantly there. So I'm meeting with a Portuguese real estate broker. We're looking at boutique hotels there, small hotels, 25 doors or less. And I had sent him some properties in advance that he made appointments for to go take a look at, right? So now I'm going to meet him for the first time in person. We're going to go visit some properties for the first time in person. And I would analyze the property. We walk through it together, take an hour, 2 hours at each one. And then I would come out and I would say, okay, tell me what you saw. And he would say, well, in regards to what? Well, tell me what you saw for the fit and finish. What do you think of the refurbishment they did, right? We'll start there. Then what do you think of the floor plan of each of them? So we go through some major items, and then I would say, okay, here's what I see. All right, so now we're comparing notes. I'm letting him see my perspective of the painting, right? I've heard his perspective of the painting. Here's mine. Now we're both nodding, right? He's a good guy. I worked diligently to find him before I made the time to go over there to Portugal. So we were kind of on the same page. But now we're looking at tangible properties worth millions of dollars. We need to be on the same page so that I can delegate to him to make decisions for me when I can't look at the property. Really important decisions, right? So we came up with this really quick method after the first building, and it was scale of 1 to 5. What are you rating that as a buy opportunity for what we're looking for? And I was a 5 and he was a 5. And we'd look at the next one. And the next one wasn't so good. Okay, what did you see? I saw a 2.5 and he'd say, I saw a 3. Okay, so we're off by a little bit. Where are we off and why? Well, he thought the location overrode the lack of high-end equipment that they use to refurbish the kitchen. So I said, all right, that's interesting. Location is very important. Is it more important than the dishwasher when you're on vacation? Yes, I agree with you. Okay, so now my 2.5 is a 3. And we went through the whole day like that, comparing notes. Here's what I see. What do you see? Are we on the same page? And by the third or fourth property, we were seeing 4s and 5s together. So, but really simple, 9th grade level communication. What did you see? What did you like? What didn't you like and why? Instead of just walking out going, yeah, all right, that was pretty good. Let's go look at the next one. Well, you wasted your time if that's your conversation, in my opinion, right? You're there, you're looking at it, it's fresh in your mind. Get into the details, pull it apart, analyze it, so that when you go to the next one, the communication is much more efficient. Now, if we went through all 10 properties, and at the end, I said, you know what? None of these fit my buy box. We're not going to buy any of these. He would go, well, why didn't you tell me that all day? Or vice versa. I would say, all right, I'm interested in these. And he would say, well, you know, I think they're not worth the value they are. And I would say, well, why not? Why do you think they're overpriced, right? You're trying to have these conversations after the fact and go over 10 different things at one time. So real-time communication, analyze it while it's unfolding in front of you. You address it quicker, you learn quicker, and then you react quicker the next time. It helps me, it helps him, and it helps, you know, the other broker also, because we can go into a third property and go, here's what I want to look at, here's what I'm looking for, here's why it doesn't match what we want. Thank you very much, appreciate your time. On to the next one.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, I feel like,
But I have to say, like, I'm giving you the Cliff's Notes, right? That is from years of making mistakes. That's from years of banging my head against the wall going, why am I not making any progress here? Why am I not selling any cars? Why am I not finding any properties that fit into my buy box? And taking the time to break it all down and analyze it and say, what could I have done differently then? And what am I going to do differently next time? And then here's the key third piece, I think, Matt, that we're not talking about yet. You have to have the discipline to do that every single time. If you don't, you're wasting your time. So you put together your brand building, you put together your mindset, and then you put the discipline to do it the same way every single time. And that, in my opinion, is what makes you a 1%er and not a 99%er. Anybody can do it like 30% of the time. Very few people can do it 99.9% of the time.
So, okay, so discipline. So where did you learn about discipline? Do you have any lessons that kind of like, yeah, I learned like I was goofing off too much, or I was only putting in 30%. Where do you get that fire? How do you get yourself in that mind space where like I'm all in 99% and day in, day out, hour by hour, minute by minute?
Yeah, I think it comes from sports when you're young, right? You're learning from mentors. You're learning about a team. There were plenty of days where I would say, Mom, I don't feel like going to football practice. And I started playing, you know, sports 6, 7, 8 years old at a young age. I don't feel like going today. And she'd put me in the car and take me there. You committed. You signed up. You're going to practice today, right? So knowing very quickly that if you sign your name on something, it's a reflection of who you are, and you better stand behind it. So that was a big one for me, is sports. And I always look to hire people that have come from sports or have a background in sports, because they understand a team environment in the true sense of the word, right?
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it just was a natural fit. You know, during an interview, I wouldn't ask people, you know, first what they did at their last job. I'd start, you know, let's rewind a little bit. Where'd you go to high school? What did you do before high school? Were you involved in sports? And I love people. Yeah, my parents had a dry cleaning store, and I worked at the dry cleaning store part-time. Like, I'm interested in that person. What'd you do after school? After school, I played basketball and I had basketball or music lessons, right? I'm interested in that person. They show discipline, they show commitment, they understand how a business works. And then I think the other thing was I wasted a lot of time going to a really good, expensive prep high school. And I was just not the English lit major. I wasn't the physics major. And for me, I'm a people person, and that could be a curse when you're in an environment where people are trying to learn, right? I was more of a distraction than anything else, not just to myself, but eventually to the people around me, right? And I saw people gravitating away from me during the physics class because I was distracting them, plain and simple. I was no longer value add to them. I was a distraction. So I learned quickly through sports and being observant of your environment. Are you adding something that people are going towards, or are you putting something out that people are going away from? And it was very instinctual to me. I don't know where it came from. My parents weren't business people. They weren't even sports people. It just, via osmosis, it kind of stuck with me. I was 12, 13 years old buying books about how Richard Branson started Virgin Records. I was not buying Sports Illustrated magazines. It just, where it came from, I couldn't tell you, but it's there and it's a passion.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's, I think it sounds like you were, I don't know if born with, but it kind of emerged. Yep. And I think that's important too, though. Tell me this, like the piece of the discipline that's also important is you have to, yourself. You just said, you realized you're outgoing, you're social, you don't fit in this group and that group, but it's also in terms of the business as well. Like you're learning along the way what you're good at. Even though you didn't think you were going to be good at cars or sales or whatever, here you are. You figured it out along the way. But that's also got to be part of the discipline. Like you got to enjoy what you're doing, because if you wake up every day and you're not passionate about what you're doing, you don't care about it, it's harder to. So that's got to be a piece of that, getting to that level where you're like, for me, when I get up every day, I can't wait to sit at my desk, get to work. Let's do it, because I love what I do, even though I don't travel very often. But I still.
Yeah. But we're gonna do a road show. We're gonna get you traveling.
Yeah, I need a road show. That's right. Yes. But yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. So a lot of great lessons there. Let's talk a little bit about your business. How's your business doing? How's real estate doing? How's the work? Like the world right now is a little crazy. There's a lot going on, and it seems like the economy's not great. Things are bad. If you watch the news, but how is it really? How is, like, especially the real estate business? How is that going for you?
Phenomenal is the short answer, right? There's always different balls in the air when it comes to investing. Whether it's the latest and greatest AI stocks or crypto, real estate is tried and true. It's easy to explain. It's an appreciation asset for the most part. And a lot of people are interested in investing in it because it's the foundation of their portfolio. All the other higher risk stuff for most people tends to be an add-on, right? Where's my risk? Where's my reward? So for me, real estate became a passion very quickly. You and I were talking about traveling before the show started, and I started looking in properties in Europe because I want to travel to Europe more often. Start selfishly, right? Yeah. So that was one part of it, is in a perfect world, where would I want to own properties? And they were sprinkled throughout Europe. And here we are 4 years later with properties sprinkled throughout Europe.
Of course, it only took you 4 years because you just do things like that.
Yeah, well, listen, I go 100 miles an hour, Matt. There's no doubt about it. But what I do is I do a lot of research before. So it may seem like it was only 4 years, but it was probably really 6. Researching the market, dealing with the frustration of the U.S. real estate market, right? I was looking at multifamily in the beginning, and it didn't really ignite a passion in me, for a couple of different reasons. Number one was I'd find a property in Columbus, Ohio, an up-and-coming secondary city. And I'd send in a lead to the broker, and I wouldn't get a call back for 2 weeks. And then they'd say, well, sorry, we had 200 leads on that property. It's sold already. And I went through that. It didn't take me long to realize it's a very competitive market in the US if you're not getting deal flow that's not on market, which I wasn't. I didn't have a network. I wasn't in real estate. So I started looking at, okay, price per square foot, tourist cities in the US. Then I started looking at Europe. What's the goal? The goal is in 5 years to retire and live in Portugal. Now we've got a portfolio of properties we can live at and drive through and travel to and enjoy as investors and owners. So I said, okay, how do we make that even bigger now? That portfolio has proven itself. Every short-term rental we have has got a 4.8 rating or above. It's cash flowing. We have a great team of accountants, bookkeepers, lawyers, property managers there, all built over the past 4 years. So now I've got a real core team that I can build on, which is where the private equity fund came from. So Portugal, very similar to California type weather, whether it's Northern California or Southern California. It's a 6-hour flight from the East Coast in the United States, so it's very accessible. And they have a program there. It's called the Golden Visa Program. So if you invest 500,000 euro into an approved fund, which our fund will be approved by the Portuguese government, they'll give you permanent residency for yourself, your family, and your spouse after about 5-year period. So now you're offering something that U.S. investors are looking for. The United States is the second largest investor into Portugal already. Real estate is an easy conversation. It's very low risk for investors, and it all fit together very, very well and quickly. And all of a sudden, we had all these fund partners in Portugal that said, listen, we heard about what you're putting together. We want to manage the fund for you. We want to be your partner in this. Hospitality there is just booming year over year. Property values, to give you kind of a barometer, in California, 2 or 3% per year. Portugal, we've averaged over the last 5 years 14%.
Oh, wow.
And they're revitalizing their secondary city, which is Porto. Lisbon's the main city. Porto's the secondary city. And I just came back from there. All the sidewalks are being redone by the city. The streets are being repaved. All the building facades are being redone. They're investing in businesses. So you can see, even though it's grown that much in the last 3 or 4 years, it's only growing that much more over the next 3 or 4 years. So it makes it a very, very attractive city. It makes it attractive to investors because it's real estate. And then you put a little spin on it where it's hospitality related real estate. So the tourist markets, which is driving all of the economy, and it just checks every single box to make it a no-brainer of an investment.
Wow. I feel like we could have a whole episode just on real estate and investing.
Yeah, you definitely could. But you talked about your passion. You talked about your passion, right? I'd love to do a part 2 because there's so many things we can unpack. I learned a lot of the stuff that you and I are talking about today from podcasts like yours, from guests that you have on the show. Talk about multifamily real estate. So I went down that rabbit hole. Talk about commercial real estate. I went down. None of it really resonated with me. And then I came across a podcast. It was called Lifestyle Investing, or something similar to that. Invest in lifestyle. And it was really the strategy and the theory is, what do you want to build your lifestyle around for the next 10 or 15 years? And how can you invest into things that support that? And that's where this international real estate portfolio came from and the private equity firm came from. So international real estate, like I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning, phone calls with Portugal, looking at properties. I'm passionate about it. My wheels are spinning at night, looking for new partners that can help me scale. I'm passionate about it. And it's an easy conversation. People, oh, I was in Portugal. I loved it. It was my, favorite city I've ever visited. My daughter just got married there. I just talked to an investor yesterday that he just got married there. And then you add on this golden visa that Portugal offers, gives people an option they've never had before. So you can travel freely, and you can be an owner.
Wow. Sounds amazing. Yeah. I the only exposure to real estate besides owning my own house is my father was in real estate for a number of years, for decades, just by small properties and, multifamily and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
But from afar, I'm like, that's not what I want to do. What you're doing seems like it's a lot more exciting and interesting.
Well, what I did was I realized the same as you, multifamily. I wasn't interested in owning a building in Columbus, Ohio. And a lot of people are very successful at doing that, and they're passionate about it, which is why they're successful. It just, I listened to that internal voice, right? It wasn't gonna get me up in the morning and get me excited. Yeah. But what kind of twist what's an investment vehicle that I would be interested in investing in? And I couldn't find it, so I created it. That's how this all came about.
That's awesome. Yeah. We should talk about part 2. I think everybody, we might have one. But for now, if somebody wants to reach out, they want to, learn more about what you do, or get involved, or, just chat with you somewhere. Do you hang out somewhere on the World Wide Web?
LinkedIn is the best way to get me. And if you just search for Daniel Daly, you'll see me come up for Global Investment Partnership. Our website is globalipllc.com. And I've got a consulting firm that I also have called Aim High Now, which is helping businesses, any type of business, figure out how to create a better customer experience to keep customers longer.
Oh, is that part 3 we're talking about?
Well, let's do it.
All right. Sounds good, Dan. Thanks for joining us. It was really great. A lot of good stuff.
It was a pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And UnifiedLabs.ai is where we explore smart, practical ways to integrate AI directly into your website and e-commerce flows. From intelligent chatbots to marketing automation to back-end reporting, all with a strong focus on user experience and making your systems work smarter. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with someone who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building smarter, bolder, and with purpose.